So I wait for a full thing of pause in my that little top right corner of the FaceTime audio on the waveform. That's what I did. That was my pause.
I mean, I appreciate it. I like that. I don't need near that much silence.
I know, but I was just like, hey, there's a measurable thing right there.
I do like that as a measurement. It's kind of like my drink measurement method.
Oh, yeah. Just so folks know, your drink measurement method is you take a large block of ice, like a large cube of ice, and you put it in your glass, and you fill it up until it's floating. And you drink that, and then you fill it up again until it's floating. And you repeat.
Repeat as necessary.
Yes, I like that. Repeat as necessary. You remember Pete the parrot? Or Pete, oh man, Pete repeat. I can't even remember what that joke was when I was a kid.
I know what you're talking about, but I do not know the joke.
Yeah, I can't remember it either. But anyway, I have some follow-up.
Great. Let's hear it.
So the follow-up I had was I sort of articulated a bit better about the position I have, not the position that I was defending or arguing from somebody else, but definitively my position on the N-word in lyrics as sung by white folks and why I think it's not okay. So I had to, we got into it a few times, like a couple of times, maybe even 3 times.
It was more a matter of
You pressed your position because you had a pretty...
the big thing was if you put something out there and it's a piece of media, like if you're reading a book out loud, are you going to skip over what the author wrote or are you going to read it? It's the same mentality that I take to any form of entertainment in the public sphere.
See, and I was saying, no, it's not okay because of appropriation. And, you had some good arguments against that. And I was like, well, that's not exactly it. And then I got into like something that I was told by a friend of mine that is black, and why I shouldn't say it. And, I got to thinking about, you could probably, if you polled enough people, you could probably find black people that say, it's okay. It's not a big deal. No problem. And then you've also got folks in the black community that say black people shouldn't be saying that word either. Now that I would agree with. That would be in line with my general line of thinking as well. But not to derail you this quick. I want to explain that specific statement because it sounds questionable, right? If we're going to look at a word as being offensive, it should be ubiquitously offensive. Is the approach that I take. Now, I recognize that me using the word to describe someone would be offensive and should be offensive. The only time I would ever use the word is if I were reading a quote, something verbatim. If I listened to music that had it, then, maybe. But and this is where the conversation started. But for me, my viewpoint would be, let's just have nobody use the word because it is offensive. So there might be a time when it is appropriate to say it in a quote for effect. Depends on your audience as well and how well your audience knows you. I remember reading about Django Unchained, and the Leonardo DiCaprio was having a hard time saying the N-word as much as he did. And I think that movie has a record for the most N-words used in a movie. Something like over 200 times it said. And he was having trouble. And Samuel L. Jackson went up to him and said, hey, this is just a Tuesday on the set. Letting him know it was okay because what they were depicting was an accurate portrayal of how bad it was in the South. Like, there were things that were shown in that, like, there's things in that movie that were just outlandish and not real. They did not happen. But there were things in that movie that depicted how slave owners treated the slaves that were just incredibly hard to watch. And it was appropriate because it portrays the atrocities of slave ownership in the South in a way that shows you how bad it was.
And that's not something that we need to forget. The same thing, in as much as we don't need to forget how terrible and how white people went to lynchings, like as a pastime, not 60 years ago.
And just a quick interjection, lynching has only recently been banned as a hate crime across the board.
Right.
And we're recording in 2022.
Right. So there is a time and a place, but it's very specific. And I personally don't feel like it's okay as a white passing person to say the N-word at all, ever, including lyrics. And it's really not even, like I said, there might be a part of the black community that says, no, it's okay. And there's another part of the black community that says, no, it's not okay. Only we can say it in this way. And then there might be another part of the black community that says, no, not even them, not even they can say it either. So, and there are probably some other varied responses to that. But I've come to the conclusion it's not really for me to understand. I just need to understand that there are too many people, black and white, that would be offended by me saying it. So I don't. It's not okay, even in lyrics.
I can understand that. And of course, the part about this that I find interesting is like I'm arguing something that I never do.
Right. But there are people that do argue it, and then when they say, well, it's part of the lyric, I should be able to say it. And what I think is like, should you be able to say it, or do you just not like being told that you can't say it and you're not used to that?
That's a good point. And that feeds very well with part of why I have an issue with our topic that we'll get to later.
That was it for the feedback. Follow up.
Well, I have a couple of bytes.
Oh, you want to do bytes?
Yeah, they've got to come first because they're off topic.
Do you put chapter markers for bytes and stuff?
I put a chapter marker for the bytes. I don't actually subdivide them. I used to do a lot more with the chapters, and then I realized nobody's paying attention to these.
Less is more.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you do it for bytes and follow-up bytes, the big things.
Yeah, I do each section. So there'll be intro and follow-up, then bytes, and the show topic. And then, like, if we have a disclaimer, I'll absolutely put a chapter marker on the disclaimer just to help bring awareness, that kind of thing. And then if we have a big digression that I want to call attention to, I play with it. But for the most part, the structure of the show is pretty guessable at this point. You've got intro and follow-up, bytes, show topic, wrap-up, where to find us.
All right, let's do some bytes.
So both of them are about Ukraine. And the main reason I even wanted to mention them at this point is just because I'm still struggling in a lot of ways with the response that we've had. We've talked about this a couple of episodes back, where part of me says, why the hell aren't we doing more when this is a country that's actually asking for our help in defending a democracy and pursuit of individual freedoms, and we've invaded countries for less over past time. And I get that there's a lot of stuff that I don't understand. I'm not a military strategist, etc. But a couple of things that have kind of caught my eye as I've been thinking about the conflict recently. One, and both of these articles will be linked in the show notes, but the first one is of note because over recent days, Russia has escalated to an extent by using a different class of weapon, what's been referred to as the hypersonic missiles, and that they were considering chemical attacks. I think it was the same article that was talking about the ability of the Russian military to really create greater devastation from the air is actually something that is possible but has not been done, showing that there's a somewhat strategic balance between complete obliteration of areas versus can I just do enough damage to weaken morale and gain some ground and not incur the wrath of other countries. Interesting article. Not a whole lot I wanted to necessarily talk about other than it's concerning that here we are a couple of weeks in and we're talking about an escalation of types of weaponry used, because that just doesn't bode well for anybody.
No, it does not.
The other one is more interesting from a political perspective because it's talking about the UN General Assembly having two different draft resolutions to vote on. One one from Ukraine mentioning or criticizing Russia's role in the crisis, and one from South Africa with no mention of Russia. And there are two little pieces on that second one that kind of jumped out at me. One, South Africa's argument was that it remains crucial to find consensus on humanitarian matters, which sounds great. Diverting focus to other matters just leads to divisions and failures to agree, which kind of makes sense until you take a follow-up from that in perspective, where the South African president said that he would resist calls to condemn Russia, instead blamed NATO for stirring the conflict. So I follow the introduction of a resolution without citing Russian aggression as an attempt to try to get maybe, Russia to vote on it as well, because they wouldn't be condemning themselves, so to speak. And that sounds great, but that second piece just sounds off the mark, like way off the mark, unless there are activities preceding this that I'm just completely oblivious to. And I don't think there are, but I'll be honest, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to what NATO countries do most of the time because they talk a lot and that's about it.
Well, they might talk a lot, but they also put their bases and weapons in places, or at least have reserved the right to, or it is easier to, maybe not to reserve the right to, but it is easier to create a strategic military outpost in a NATO country than it is a non-NATO country. And
it's easier to move troops and armaments around those countries. I understand, but that happens all the time.
Yeah, so I get why, Putin is concerned because, NATO would be in his backyard if Ukraine joined. But,
But at the same time, if Ukraine is taken, then NATO's in his backyard by proxy.
Right. So that is tricky. So there's I'm sure there are other aspects to that as the occupation of Ukraine, but at the same time, the only reason Russia is not a part of NATO is because it can, they want to serve their own interests. They don't want to be a part of that coalition.
And generally speaking, they're big enough and strong enough to not be a part of that coalition.
Right. They don't, it comes down to they don't want to be told what to do.
Right. So to following that, I'm not going to name anyone or even hint at, but I had a conversation with someone who is in a position to know a lot more about these things than I am, for sure. And I think I'll leave it at that. And I think you can kind of read between the lines a little bit there. But two things in my conversation with them that kind of struck me is, one, the Russian military is far stronger than what we've seen. So what exactly is the play here? And two, we have more than sufficient capabilities, we being the United States alone, not even including other allied countries, but we have the ability to absolutely resolve the conflict, even in the threat of nuclear escalation, without having it escalate. So what exactly are we waiting on or thinking the play is long-term as well? And we don't have answers to any of those, but it's very interesting.
The whole time I think about, it's like, the scary part is like, if, what happened, who's going to pull their nukes out first? And then if they pull their nukes out, do we pull our nukes out? Do the other people, our allies, pull their nukes out? I don't know.
And on top of that, I do not remember for sure if it was one of the two articles that I referenced, but one of them, I think it was the one talking about the potential escalation to chemical warfare, mentioned that the availability of smaller scale nuclear armaments actually increase the risk of it becoming a nuclear conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, it's when they say that, that phrase, you're too smart for your own good, and then it's like, that's just a nice way of saying you're dumb, and it's like, yeah, we're dumb. We made nukes. We're dumb. Like, to make something like that is a dumb thing to do.
I can't argue that necessarily, but at the same time, somebody was going to do it. Like, the unfortunate byproduct of technological advancement means that at some point something worse is going to be made as well.
Oh yeah, I know.
But that's all I had for Bytes. I don't want to burden us down. I think we've spent more time on it than I originally even thought. But
that's how we do.
Well, I mean, realistically, how things shape up in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, it's going to impact us for a long time, regardless of the outcome. And it's probably one of the more prescient current events. I mean, the pandemic that is never ending is, of course, part of it, but honestly, this conflict feels like it could be even more future defining than the pandemic.
Sure.
It depends a lot on the next week or so.
I was going to say, at this point, I keep thinking about, how long did Trump being in office delay this? Not that it was good that Trump was in office, but how long did it delay this because it slowed NATO talk, it slowed NATO talks with Ukraine down, or Putin felt like he had an ally in the White House.
Or did it actually slow it down?
Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it had nothing. Maybe it had nothing to do with it. I don't know.
And it could have accelerated it. Maybe the original thought was to whittle a little bit further, and all of a sudden you had more or less an ally in office, and it's like, oh, well, I can accelerate my timeline.
That's true.
And plenty of ways you could go one way or the other. It all depends on knowing facts that we don't have access to.
And maybe we'll be around long enough for the historians to answer those questions.
I kind of hope so, because I do find it fascinating, even though it's horrific and on so many levels. But this is classic geopolitical warfare.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of intrigue there
because we've never really lived through it.
Right.
We've only lived through, you and I, we've only lived through, when we thought we'd invade the Middle East for a little bit. And that was...
Well, technically we did.
Parts of it. I don't know. I mean, towards the end of the Cold War, how much... I don't really know. I don't really know how much there was a threat of a hot war.
I don't either. Growing up, it was always referenced as the Cold War. It was always, well, if Russia does something, huddle under this piece of wood and hope that you don't burn to death. The major conflict, the only quote unquote major conflicts that have occurred during my lifetime have been going into Iraq for Hussein, and then going into Afghanistan post 9/11.
And then going back into Iraq?
Well, I mean, that was part of the same...
Oh, we went twice. Even
though it was separated, it was the same operation. It was just separated by time. Or at least that's, as far as I'm concerned, it was the same op. It was Hussein needs to be removed. It wasn't successful, and then it was finishing a job.
Well, the first time it was because Iraq invaded Kuwait.
True. There was
second time.
There was more justification the first time around than the second.
There was no justification the second time around.
I disagree a little bit with that. I think there was justification. It was just not actually what was presented.
Are we talking about weapons of mass destruction?
Yes. So the weapons didn't exist. The justification was Hussein was evil and needed to be removed, and that was not the story that was given.
And why haven't we invaded Russia for the same reason?
That's a good point.
All right.
I agree completely.
Okay.
And I think if either Bush was currently president, we'd probably be drafting plans already, if not having moved. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. You know, like that's the other part of it, right? I don't want to say we should already be invading, but at the same time, I feel like we should. So,
at what point? I mean, at what point do the ideas of nations? What point is there? At this point, aren't they out? Aren't different nations outdated?
You want to explain that one a little bit differently?
Well, our world is so interdependent upon every other part of our world that the idea of nation states is now unimportant and arbitrary or outdated. Like, who cares if it's made?
So we would be better served by a unified governmental body in general? Is that kind of where you're going with the thought?
Probably.
I agree. Probably didn't expect it to be that easy.
No, I did. I don't think that anyone who's given it half a thought or been presented with the idea thinks that the idea of nation states are relevant anymore.
There is a certain level of relevancy.
There's more cultural relevancy.
Right. It's more a matter of what is actually meaningful and practical for the advancement of humanity. That's where you have to kind of separate the thought processes, because thinking about the idea of nation states or regions, you're always going to have the culture argument. But nothing precludes culture from being a societal aspect of a region. It doesn't mean that you have to have your own separate nation state to embrace said culture. You just have to have a governmental body that allows for the different cultural practices across its domain
land
of influence.
Yeah. Right. And at this, because it would be a bullshit argument, because how many single nations have multiple cultures within them? Like, so many.
All.
And they're
right. North Korea maybe not, but almost all.
Yeah, but North Korea is an artificial society in that regard. North
Korea should be assimilated. Resistance is futile.
Suppressed, like actual.
I had to sneak in a Star Trek reference. I haven't done that yet.
So should we? Do we talk about a topic now?
I think so. I think we've kind of danced around it actually already up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, was it the New York Times? I actually need to pull up my notes real quick. It was
New York Times.
That's what I thought. So,
because it's like, how many times can I refresh this page without them being like, "Hey, you gotta subscribe."
Yeah, they're so horrible. They really are.
They gotta make money too.
Yeah.
Wordle's they're not charging for Wordle, so I'm okay with that.
The New York Times had an opinion piece, which obviously is a red flag if you're a critical thinker. But they had an opinion piece that was talking about how America has a free speech problem. And I have so many problems with this opinion piece, it's really difficult to figure out where to start. But here's the thesis. The right to speak minds and voice opinions in public without fear of being shamed or shunned is supposedly a protected right. How many times can you say bullshit before it sinks in? Like 30, 40, 50? Should I record like bullshit and just loop it for 10 minutes? Here's the big problem I have with it. There are too many people that I know directly that probably interpret the right to free speech as exactly that. Now, I say probably because I haven't gone and asked these people what they think it means to have a right to free speech.
It's a wet finger in the air.
And I'm assuming based on other conversations, other leanings, influences, things that I do know about them. So I want to back up to the very core fundamental thing that we're talking about first. And then we can take it further, and I'll include a couple of quotes from the article. We're talking about the American right to free speech. Would you like to educate our listeners, John, on what that actually means, or shall I take the reins?
I want to hear what you're going to say.
So, having a right to free speech means that you can say whatever you want. That's it. You're going to have to face the repercussions of whatever you say. And some of the things you say may be deemed illegal if they infringe on other people's rights or cause harm to others.
Okay. I was hoping you were going to go there with that.
Yeah. For example, if you walk into a movie theater and you yell, "Fire," you're breaking the law.
Yes.
There has never, in any society, on any scrap of this earth, been a right to say or whatever, to say or speak or write anything that you choose without repercussion. You can say whatever you want. That doesn't mean that you get to say it and not hear anything else about it. If someone takes offense to it, they can tell you. You might even break a law or 3. Or in other countries, 20. You do not have a given right to say whatever you want to say and not have that statement be subject to criticism or rebuttal or sanction. The right to free speech merely states that the government will not say that you cannot say whatever you want to say. Doesn't say anything about what repercussions you're going to face for saying what you want to say.
I think if we look in like one of the purest forms of why free speech is good in the past 100 years, you might think about the newscasters that would talk about McCarthy during the 50s, 60s, and his charade of or his witch hunt for communist sympathizers. Now, in a country where you don't have free speech, those broadcasts never get aired. But in this country where you do have free speech, and it was right for them to be talking about the misbehavior that he was like, or I don't know, it's more than misbehavior. Like, anyway, the rights that McCarthy was infringing upon, it was right for them to talk about it. It was their duty as journalists and news reporters, and they did not get off scot-free with that, even though they should have been protected.
You mean the journalists?
Yes.
So there's an interesting intersection of this argument when you talk about freedom of the press versus ethical distinctions and potential libel, slander, etc. because there's not a quote unquote right to a freedom of the press. We often reference, freedom of speech as the fundamental right for the basis of an objective press. And there's a gray area there, because the press can write whatever they want to write, for sure, right? That's protected under the same freedom of speech.
Right.
The issue, and where a lot of the legal discussions take place, are on due diligence and did you actually try to provide basis for these statements, or did you just print these statements because they sounded good? And what level of responsibility does an agency bear for that versus an individual? So, and the only reason I even say all of that is just to recognize that when you're talking about the freedom of speech, we're specifically talking about the individual right to say what you want. When you are part of an agency or part of a group such as the press, there are other things that come into play as well. I don't want to gloss over those. I do not know those very well.
Yeah.
I'm not a member of the press. But I do recognize that there's a separate level of distinction there because of the organization, and not actually a pure reference to the fundamental right itself that applies to the individual. So the other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is yet another area where I have just really, really big problems with this article, is that the article contradicts itself.
No.
Imagine that, an opinion piece that argues against itself. Who would have guessed?
Me.
I'm going to read this verbatim, and then if I feel like adding to it, I will. This is directly from the article. Most important, freedom of speech is the bedrock of democratic self-government. If people feel free to express their views in their communities, the democratic process can respond to and resolve competing ideas. Pay attention, dear reader or listener. Ideas that go unchallenged by opposing views risk becoming weak and brittle rather than being strengthened by tough scrutiny. When speech is stifled, or when dissenters are shut out of public discourse, a society also loses its ability to resolve conflict, and it faces the risk of political violence. If America has a free speech problem, where people can't say what they want and not face repercussions, that entire last piece that I read shouldn't be in your fucking opinion article. I mean, really?
Yeah, man.
So this is why I wanted to pose this as the topic and follow up our kind of overview of critical race theory. Because let's say what this really is. There are a number of members of Congress, to cast a wide net, paint a broad picture.
It's a little over 500, 600 people.
But there's a certain group of them who are annoyed that they can't say what they want to say and not be challenged by it.
No, they can say it.
No, they have no problem saying it either way. They're annoyed that they're getting challenged on what they're saying.
Oh, boo.
Some of them need to fucking get the hell out of Congress. But that's a whole separate subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably around 50%, give or take. When you start arguing that America has a problem with free speech, or that you have issues with quote-unquote cancel culture, and you can't say things that you used to be able to say a decade ago without somebody being offended, and you try to minimize that by any number of a few thousand memes talking about it, in my day we didn't get offended by a joke or whatever. Take a moment, take it just a brief step back and wonder if most of the people around you don't really like being around you. Maybe you're the problem. Just a thought. Then again, I am also reminded we're in the Southeast. After paying attention to local broadcast because of weather this evening and seeing the political ads played, like, honestly, the Southeast is just a fucking shithole of inbred. I don't even know. I can't even go any further. Like, the shit that I saw playing in between weather updates was so horrifically just disgusting. Maybe it's more a matter of, you know what, don't take the Southeast's vote into consideration in future elections. Just cut them off. I know it took a very, very different turn, but it just... I'm surrounded by such ridiculous notions of reality that I don't even know where to begin anymore. I really don't.
It's like you have grown-ups that didn't learn how to be grown-ups. That's what it boils down to.
I don't even know that I can attribute it to that, though. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
So here's
okay, so is it people that just don't understand irony?
I don't know what it is. I think it's people that are just so fucking blind to anything that is not spoon-fed. So there are two really distinct themes that recently I've seen from every political advertisement in Alabama. I'm not going to say the Southeast as a whole because I haven't paid attention to other states, but Alabama specifically, everything I've seen has been Republican advertisements. Everything is talked about Christian values and building the wall and protecting the unborn. Those are fucking bullshit ideas. So let's dissect it a little bit. Because why not? Who cares about the actual show topic? We're going to derail this like way out of left field. Protecting the unborn. Let's start with that one. It's probably the most controversial of the three. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe middle of the road. That unborn fetus doesn't give a shit about your protection. You're either pro-life or pro-choice. Either way, you don't have any reason to be able to regulate that choice that is based in anything other than your preference. That's it. There's no scientific basis, there's no medical basis other than you choosing to recognize the existence of life at some point between conception and birth. All of that is theoretical. You can make a debate about, viable embryo, sure. That at least provides some medical basis, but that's not what's being talked about with all the different laws being passed at 6 weeks. It's not viable at 6 weeks. Who are you kidding? I think the better one, the one that I have more fun with lately, it's the whole Christian argument. Like, if you're sending a mailer, talking about Christian values, etc., blah, 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 it doesn't mean anything in this grand scheme of politics unless you're violating the complete foundation of what our government was designed to be.
Before you jump into that.
All right.
There's a thing I need to find. I'm okay with cutting just the last few seconds where you're about to change to that point that I would love to read.
Yeah. Didn't mean to blindside you, but I had so while we've been recording, I've had ABC 3340 up, obviously, muted in case I've had, something I need to pay attention to for the weather, which I think is all mostly past now. But I see so many fucking ads as we record, and it just, every single one pisses me off a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and I finally broke. The one that really gets me, there's one ad that's been playing that talks about who would you trust for border security, and it's got, Obama and Trump in a comparison, etc. And the ad specifically states that Trump is worse than Obama when it came to border security, whatever the statement is. But then like the colors of the ad shift, like it's, promoting this other candidate. And this other candidate, the tagline is the whole Trump tough on border security. Granted, all of these have been muted. I don't actually know what the audio is. Maybe the audio would explain it. But the visuals do not support what is presented on screen. And it's just so baffling. Oh, and I saw one that actually had audio on for that was apparently Kay Ivey decided that she should have a advertisement that basically says, you know what? My parents said if you didn't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. So this is what I have to say about Joe Biden. And then it's just her sitting there.
Yeah, I saw that one. I saw that. It was a Super Bowl ad.
It's so dumb.
I get the bullshit that she's slinging, but it's just like.
Well, and then you turn around and on social media, she's praising the investment of like what Alabama is getting from the American Rescue Plan and blah, 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 blah. It's like, come on, how hypocritical can you actually be?
All right, I found the quote. I think I've shared this with you, and I loved it, and I love that it comes from a Methodist pastor, David Barnhart, and it is, quote, "The unborn are a convenient group of people to advocate for. They never make demands of you. They are morally uncomplicated, unlike the incarcerated, addicted, or the chronically poor. They don't resent your condescension or complain that you are not politically correct, unlike widows. They don't ask you to question the patriarchy. Unlike orphans, they don't need money, education, or childcare. Unlike aliens, they don't bring all that racial, cultural, and religious baggage that you dislike. They allow you to feel good about yourself without any work at creating or maintaining relationships. And when they are born, you can forget about them because they cease to be unborn. You can love the unborn and advocate for them without substantially challenging your own wealth, power, or privilege, without reimagining social structures, apologizing, or making reparations to anyone. They are, in short, the perfect people to love if you want to claim you love Jesus but actually dislike people who breathe. Prisoners, immigrants, the sick, the poor, widows, orphans, all of the groups that are specifically mentioned in the Bible, they all get thrown under the bus for the unborn," unquote.
I love that. And I love it because it's even more prescient when you actually think about the difference between an actual fundamental following of the Christian faith and the typical Southeastern Christian.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to piss some people off here. Most people in the Southeast are fucking hypocrites. Let's just get that out of the way.
Yep.
To be a follower of Christ is to love everyone around you. Doesn't matter what they've done. Doesn't matter who they are. There are no characteristics. It is to love your fellow human, to help your fellow human, to do what you can to support them and to promote their well-being. There are no divisions. There is nothing whatsoever anywhere within the Christian faith to say X person should receive that support and X person should not. If you are supposedly a follower of any religious faith that is subdividing people, you've got it wrong. Plain and simple. There is no teaching whatsoever that treats one person as different than another when it comes to who you should choose to love and support and promote. None. There are some variations about who are the quote-unquote chosen people who will, be a part of different groups, etc., within certain religions that I am not well versed in. I'm not going to pretend to explain them. I know that there are delineations on who will receive what level of reward post-death within certain religions. But on earth, all of the major religions, every single one of them, Know what they have in common? To treat everybody around you with love, respect, honor.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap. I so wanted to keep ranting.
Yeah, no, that was the end of it right there.
There's just so much there that it just pisses me off so much lately.
Yeah, I can see. Well, yeah, go ahead. Be preparing for this and then have a bunch of, political ads play. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I don't think there's enough whiskey in the world to make me forget it. I don't have anything for an after show. I tried to come up with a couple of things, but I really don't have anything to follow up with.
I don't have anything for an after show, and we don't have to always do an after show, but I don't feel like we talked about the Apple's event. Like, we got sidetracked when talking about Apple's event and didn't actually talk about what they released. At least, I don't know. Maybe
I didn't really have a lot to say, though. Like, I love the idea of the studio. I do like the studio display. I almost ordered one. It's just that I currently don't have an office I would truly put it in. Like, my current office is just kind of a, put together storage / workplace. It's not like it's designed as an office or study.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I would have thought that I would have gotten the display already, and I think it's a great display. And the only reason I haven't is I've become accustomed to using the computer display. And then on top of that, one day, I don't know, it's fine. Like, I'm fine where I am, and so I don't know.